Hello, everyone. I'm Deborah Jason, and you're on the Marketing Blab with Deborah. And I am the author of Millionaire Marketing on a Shoestring Budget and DeborahJason.com. Thank you all for being here today. I'm very excited because I have a wonderful guest, and she's considered kind of the networking queen here in Colorado. And before I knew about her, it seemed I always heard about her. And we connected on Facebook and discovered we had many, many friends in common. So please welcome my guest, Sabrina Risley. Sabrina is the founder of the Strategist Network, which is a group of people that get together all over Colorado at different days and times. And before I say much more about her, I'm going to introduce her so she can share something about herself. Thank you, Sabrina, for being patient with the technical gremlins.
I was worried.
And for joining us.
I was worried this was going to happen. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to this for a couple of weeks to just share some information and pick your brain too on networking.
Oh, well, I'm happy to have my brain picked. Why don't you share with our viewers? Some of them may not know you at all. I know we have a few familiar faces here, but why don't you share something about yourself that maybe people don't know, but you'd like them to know?
Unrelated to networking?
It could be about yourself. It could be about your business, about Strategist.
Well, I speak German, though broken now. I used to be a little more fluent. I learned German when I was 4 years old, and just to communicate with family and friends in Germany, and my mom's from Germany. Another funny little thing about me is I can walk on my hands. Maybe only 8 steps now, but I can. And another funny thing about me that not many people would guess is that I feel awkward about networking just as much as the next person does. It's a learned skill and not something we're born with, and certainly not something I was born with, and it took me years to figure it out. But I just wanted people to feel more comfortable networking and to not feel the way I felt when I would go to events. I felt awkward. I felt like the wallflower. I didn't know how to make best use of my time there. And I went to one networking event in probably 2007 and left. And mind you, by now I'm already hosting networking events. But I walked out of there thinking, I don't want anyone ever to feel so alone and unproductive at my networking events. So what can we do to make it a little better for our guests who come and network with us? So that kind of is how Certus acquired the philosophy we have and why we network the way we do.
Well, and it's been an awesome network, and it seems like it continues to grow from, I know I go to the one in Boulder every so often, and you have them in Denver, and I believe they're in Westminster. And so how far does it actually stretch from Colorado, from what city to what city?
So to the south, we're in Douglas County, Parker and Highlands Ranch. And then we pass through about 75 miles north to Boulder. So that's our northernmost event.
So is that like Fort Collins or Greeley?
Nope, just Boulder is the most north, and then down from there is Westminster, and then Lakewood, then Denver, and the DTC, yeah.
Awesome. So it's interesting to hear you say that, you didn't particularly care to network, and now you run this large networking organization. Tell us, when you did go out to network, at the time, let's say when you were uncomfortable, what would you say were some of the top things that you felt were successful? So we're going to talk today about the do's and the don'ts. So what are some of the do's that you think are beneficial for people to know when they're out there at a large event networking?
There's a few things you can do just before you even set out to go to an event, and that's to kind of look at the format of the event and what they're all about and whether it resonates with you. I would imagine if you're going to the event, you think it does, but maybe know the format. Do you want to sit there and listen to a speaker for an hour and learn something? Some people do. Or do you want a luncheon, or do you want to mix and mingle where you can meet a bunch of people and ask for introductions? So know the type of event you're going to and what suits your style best. Also commit to networking. So showing your face regularly builds credibility. So shop around for a group, find a group that suits your style and that is convenient for you based on day, time, and place, and go regularly, as regularly as you can. Bob Berg is a big mentor to me, and the first Blab I ever participated in was the one you had with Bob like a month or so ago, 2 months ago. And he talks about that know, like, trust factor. So showing up and being consistent shows people, they learn to trust you. You build a relationship that way because each time you're visiting and seeing them, you're getting to know them a little bit better. They're getting to know you. And suddenly when you go away, people think, are they not doing their, what they do anymore? Are they not in business anymore? What happened to them?
What happened to them?
Yeah. So consistency is key. And then one of the big mistakes that I made when I first set out networking, that I see a lot of folks do when they're new, is selling. Well, this is what not to do. Sorry. Are we covering that yet?
We can go in and out, but I think I know what you're going to say, because a lot of people go to networking events and they'll do one of these. Let's see, I'm looking for a business card. So they'll go up and say, "Hi, Sabrina, here's my card." Before they've ever really said, who is Sabrina? Is Sabrina somebody I want to talk to? They haven't really shown an interest. They just put their card in front of you. So I think that's probably in line with one of the don'ts, at least when I talk about connecting. Don't do that before you've had some time to talk to me and show me that you're interested.
Yeah, so on the do side is focus on the other person, ask them good questions, get to know them, ask about their business, ask how you can help them and who they maybe need to be connected to. So people love and find conversations about themselves, and when they get asked questions and they get to answer and the focus is on them, they find that conversation fascinating and they will love you for it. Of course, you do have to share information about yourself as well. Otherwise, why are we out there networking? But the point is that the more you're asking other people about themselves, usually they turn around and ask you the same question. But taking the time to really get to know people is what networking is about, so that you can help them. The more you can help them, the more you're staying in front of them. You're on the top of their mind. Hopefully along the way, they know about your business because you're forming a relationship and getting to know them. They're getting to know you. And every time you're in front of them for whatever various reasons, like you posted some of my information about how to follow up after an event and how to be unique when you do that. Those are different ways of staying in front of someone so that they remember who you are and what you do. Just stay on top of it.
Here's a question for you. You said ask good questions. So what would you consider, let's say, the top 2 or 3 good questions to ask? What's a good question?
There's 2 types of good questions. There's the business related good questions and personal good questions. So when we network, it doesn't always have to be about business and the conversations we're having, because really people connect with those they get to know. And sometimes that means asking what people like to do on the weekends. If you find someone who enjoys hiking and just as much as you do, maybe that's something you can do on the weekends together or in your off time and play hooky. But making friends with people and really getting to know them personally and allowing them in a little bit helps to build that relationship and build rapport a little more quickly than keeping things strictly business. But as far as business questions go, you can ask them questions about their business or what they're looking forward to, kind of forward-focused questions, I call those. Mm-hmm. Questions that are positive, that get them thinking about something positive, as opposed to talking about how terrible the traffic was getting there. Ask them what they're looking forward to that's coming up in their business, or do they have any new products they're launching, or how can I help you? What's the biggest thing you need right now in your business? So I would say questions that help that allow them to be excited about their business and to share what's going on and what's coming up. And sometimes in there, there's a little bit of request for help. So when you ask a question, I mean, you might just say, how can I help you? Or who's a good connection for you? You know, what decision maker are you trying to get in touch with, or what company are they with? Maybe I know someone who knows someone who knows someone that can connect you, right?
Well, and it's funny how that works, because just yesterday I was meeting with somebody. I was referred to the person I was meeting with. She was talking about some things that she needed, and I suggested somebody to her, and it turned out she knew that person, but she didn't know him directly. She knew him through somebody else. And so that small world gets smaller all the time. But she really appreciated that I referred this other person, because she went, you know, I knew of him, but I didn't know anybody who knew him really well. And now that you tell me that you know him, you like him, and you trust him, yeah, I'll follow through. I'll give him a call. So, you know, I speak a lot about the KLT factor, the know, like, and trust, because it's so important to develop that with people and to be sincere. So I think you've touched on it. You know, when you're at a networking event, if you show that you're interested, people will find you interesting.
Yes.
And we have someone here saying a tip. In my humble opinion, networking has to do with unique hashtags. Well, maybe that's when you're online. You know, that could be a good thing to talk about in networking online. Today we're focusing more on live in person. I think we're getting some feedback on your end.
Is it my end?
I think so. There's an echo.
You're breaking up, so I'm not sure if it's my Wi-Fi is lagging or.
I'm hardwired, so you might try. Do you have?
You know
what?
I am hardwired too. What am I thinking? Okay.
Well, we can both put in headsets. I find sometimes when I put in a headset, it doesn't work as well. I'll put on earbuds.
I'll do the same.
Can you hear me?
What was your question? Yes.
Okay.
So what was your question? About networking online.
Right. Somebody mentioned using hashtags.
Someone mentioned using hashtags.
Yes. So hashtags would be you know, that would connect people, is to have a hashtag that people are following. There we go. I am here.
Okay, can you hear me?
They're getting a lot of feedback. Are you plugged in yet?
I am. So now I don't hear feedback. Are you good? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and I don't hear feedback, so I think we're good.
Okay, good. Sorry.
So
hashtags and using hashtags. Were you saying to connect people online?
Yes, someone made a comment about using hashtags, and that's a good way to network. So to me, using hashtags is something you do online. It's not necessarily something you do at a live networking event.
It is. I agree. And I would say, I mean, networking, I have an article out there on my website, a blog article about the importance of connecting online after you've met someone offline at a live networking event, and vice versa. It's always great to meet our Facebook friends, just like when I got to meet you, Deborah. Right. We met, we knew each other online before we ever met in person. And it just helped to solidify what I knew of you and about you and how much I wanted to hang out with you once we met in person, and how much I enjoy you. So the hashtags, as long as there's a known hashtag, I would imagine, I'm not the expert at social media, but I would imagine as long as it's a known hashtag that people would recognize or know to search for, that it can kind of keep people connecting online.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could have a hashtag for Certus, and it could be
yes,
or Certus networking. So that would be perfect. But let's go back to some of the do's of networking, because I know you have one that you say is your number one networking tip.
Oh, yes.
So why don't you share
So
share your number one networking tip.
It was actually the topic. I write about this in a variety of ways and using different examples on my blog. But this month, my blog article is called What's Bacon Got to Do with Networking? And we've all heard about, the 6 Degrees of Separation, that movie back in '93. And then the game was out, kind of the cult game, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. And I started thinking about this last month, that's kind of what networking is all about. We all need to find our Kevin Bacon who is connected to the people we want to meet, our decision maker. So in my blog article, I use the example of a graphic designer who wants to build a web designer who wants to build websites maybe for startup companies. If he goes to a networking event, he may not meet someone who needs his web design services, but if he asks for introductions to people who are in touch with startups, he has a higher likelihood of being introduced to someone who may need a website, if that's what he thinks his strategy is. If he wants to look for startups, if he wants to do websites for startups. So in a roundabout way, my number one networking tip is not to go in looking for new business that day from someone at the event, but to ask for introductions to those people who are in touch with your target market, who maybe share the same target market. So our web designer might ask for introductions to investors, angel investors, CPAs, that deal with helping someone get their corporation established, or business attorneys who help people with contracts. They're just getting their business started and maybe they don't have a website yet, or a graphic designer who might be helping someone with a new logo. So it's to look for power partners and to ask for introductions to power partners and not be shy about asking for help. So we're not networking we are networking to get new business, but not that day at that very event. We're asking for introductions instead to a power partner, to our Kevin Bacon, basically.
I think that's a great point, because I think a lot of people go to networking events, and you can tell me if you think I'm wrong, but I think some people go thinking, I'm going to make a sale. I'm going to find that person to sell today. And rarely does it ever happen right then and there at a networking event, because you have to build that relationship. And so if people shifted their mindset a little bit about it, going, I want to go and just see who I connect with, and actually I tell people, especially if it's a large event, try to connect with 2 or 3 people sincerely. I went to an event once, and maybe you were there. It wasn't a service event, but it was in Denver. And the woman online that was registering, she turned around and she said to me, my goal tonight is to hand out 50 business cards, 50. And that was her goal. And my thought was, do you think she really connected with 50 people? I mean, in a genuine, sincere way, or was she just that person handing out the cards going, hi, here's my card, here's my card. So that, taking that time to get to know people is vital, I think.
Yeah. And I have one of my event hosts on the team coined the phrase drive-by networker. And that's what we call the person who's handing out as many business cards as possible and trying to collect as many as possible. But people don't do business with the business card or the business. They do it with the business owner or the person that they're talking to. So one of the big do's is to really get to know people. And like you said, you can only have quality conversations with, I say, like 3 to 5 people at a large networking event. And it doesn't mean this person will buy from you. In fact, they could be the furthest customer for you, like the furthest example of a customer for you. But people who network are highly connected. So who does that person know? Who are they connected to? So that's where having the conversation, you don't know who their connections are, and they're certainly not going to open up their Rolodex. That's an old term, but they're not going to open up their Rolodex unless they know you.
I still have a Rolodex.
There you go. See, I am
old-fashioned.
We used to like tape or staple business cards onto a little card in the Rolodex. Yeah, and I'm hard copy. I love business cards too. I'm not as much an online CRM person, but I like business cards. But if someone handed me their card and just because I have their card doesn't tell me what they do or how they might do it differently from someone else who does the same thing.
Right. That's so vital because, you can have a whole box full of business cards and go through it and go, who was this person? And, I think, let's go back a step. I think when you start to have that connection, inevitably what will happen is someone says, I really enjoyed talking to you. May I have your card so we can stay in touch? And I don't know if you suggest this, but I often will then take my pen and start to write notes on the card, that we talked about dogs, or we talked about dating, or they have a child who's, on a soccer team, so that when I do stay in touch, I can refer back to that and say, Sabrina, it was great meeting you. I loved our conversation about, flowers, and I hope your garden is coming along, because yes, we all are in business. We all want to make money. We have bills to pay, but first it's about making that connection. So
yes. I do that too, and it's always good to carry along a Sharpie because some people's business cards are glossy. And I also write on there the date and the event we met at. But that's such a good point. That's another way to stay in touch. And next spring, you can bring up the flowers that you talked about the winter before, because the business card kind of has that note about it. That's a good point.
Yeah, and I like the Sharpie thing because, yes, sometimes I go to write on a card and I can't write on it. So it's like... I know one of the tips that you talk about in your things to do has to do with how soon to follow up after you meet somebody. Mm-hmm. So what's your recommendation on, you've just been to an event, you go back to your office or back home, how soon should you reconnect with that person?
Can you hear me okay? I was hearing feedback.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. I don't know if the feedback's on my side or yours. Sorry. So just let me know. You see me talking. If you don't hear me talking, let me know. So how soon? First of all, I would suggest that not everyone you meet will you follow up with. So we can follow up strategically, but not equally. You can't possibly follow up with everyone, or maybe it's not strategic to, and we need to, when we only have so much time in a day, you probably need to choose wisely who you want to follow up with, based on the discussion you had, or did you promise to follow up and help them with something, or connect them with someone? Of course, then you want to follow up, but also appreciate the idea that some conversations are just that. They're conversations there at the event, and take it for what it is. And you had a great conversation, but maybe no follow-up is necessary. If you do feel like you need to follow up and you want to follow up with someone, I think the sooner the better, within 24 hours. And whether it's just a simple thank you or delivering on what you promised to give them or follow up on, you want to follow through. And then depending on what type of connection they are, whether it's someone that could possibly be a power partner for you, your Kevin Bacon, or someone who is connected to your target market or other people that are connected to your target market, you want to then follow up regularly with that person and keep in touch. So they're probably more of like an A contact.
Well, I love what you said about, not every person that you've had a conversation with is going to be somebody that you follow up with. Because sometimes it's just a nice conversation, and sometimes it's a connection. And so it's good to make that difference, and go, okay, it was nice talking to you, Sabrina, and move on to somebody else. And I don't know, have you had this experience of going to an event and you hit it off with somebody, you just talk, you feel like they could be your best friend, And then you go talk to someone else and it's like pulling teeth. You know, you ask a question and they barely answer with one word. So have you had those experiences?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I've seen it all. I've heard it all. I've been in those awkward situations. Some people get really nervous and they're unsure of themselves and they don't know what to say. So I just think asking genuine questions that get them to talk about what they might be excited in their business. But if they don't, that's fine too. I have one of my blog articles pulled up about how polite ways to end a conversation. So it can go both ways where you're talking to someone and it's like pulling teeth to get anything out of them and get them to talk. And they're certainly, or they may even ask you a question, just get the focus off themselves. But what if you're talking to the person who keeps talking and, you know, and you do need to get away, right? So there's both. We see all types, but
so there's a polite way to step away from the conversation.
Polite way to end the conversation, and it could. Are you there?
Yeah,
I don't think I heard you.
You froze up for a second, but you're back now.
Oh, okay. So yeah, there are polite ways to end the conversation. So whether it's a good one or a not so good one, that your purpose for networking is to meet a few quality people, not to chat with just one. So even though you're having a great conversation, you're talking about flowers and hiking and babies and cats,
right?
You can make a separate appointment to talk about that, you know, and really get to know that person. In the meantime, an easy way to end the conversation is maybe, you know, John, it was really great meeting you. I promised myself I would have conversations with 3 new people here today. What do you say we get something on the calendar and then we can talk more about this for hours?
Yeah, that's
great. You know, just something simple like that.
Well, we have a question here. I'm going to open up the seats. So if somebody wants to jump on live and ask a question, you can. But we have, I'm assuming it's Luis. It might be Louis. He's asking, he's taking a friend of mine to 2 events next week, and it's new to his friend. Can you please talk about the benefits of networking with a wingman?
Very good question. So first of all, it's always more comfortable to go with someone else to a networking event if you're new to it, or maybe you and your friend are both new to it. One strategy when you're at a networking event and using something like the concept of a wingman or a wingwoman is you each know about your businesses. So you can approach someone and you can have a conversation and introduce yourselves to someone. And I might say, hey, this is my friend Deborah. She wrote a book about marketing, and I think you could really benefit from a conversation with her. And that's, of course, once you see that they maybe have a need, or if I'm a little bit more of an experienced networker and I'm taking my new friend, as Luis asked, and I think that's his situation next week. Can you hear me? Sorry. Yeah. So he knows enough about his friend's business, so he can help his friend network and introduce his friend to maybe some key people in the room if he knows who's there or knows some folks there, Louis. And like I suggested, you know, this is my friend Bob, and this is his company. Who here do you think we need to meet? I mean, so there's just different ways to help the new networker kind of get acquainted in a new situation.
That's great. Thank you, Luis, for that question. You know, and it's sometimes years ago when I first started going to Chamber of Commerce events, I always went with a friend. And we actually made it a point, we'd stick together for a while, but as a result, we wouldn't really network because we stayed by each other's side. But at some point we go, okay, we came here to meet people. Let's move on. Let's separate. And then we would, you know, make it a more concerted effort. So sometimes bringing a wingman makes you a little too comfortable and you don't reach out to new people. So it's good to know what your goal is before you get there. let's talk about
I'm
some of
still,
the, can you hear me?
yes.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the things not to do. What are some of the don'ts of networking? And we've kind of touched on some of them in the course of the conversation, but do you have, what's the number one thing that people should not do?
I was starting to touch on it a little bit earlier, and that is to not sell. So we know that we want to get new business, and that's what we're out networking for, is to grow our business and company and sign another deal. But that's the last thing we need to be doing at the networking event, because we've stressed so much today about building relationships. We don't want to sell and talk a lot about ourselves and basically barf on people about who we are and make it all about ourselves. We want to form those relationships instead. And what I always like to say is, if you ask someone, okay, so hey, do you want to buy my product? Yes or no? As soon as they say no, and they probably will because they don't know enough about it yet, you kind of don't have permission again to have another conversation with them about it. So it's just like in selling and sales, and any sales coach would show you and teach you and coach you that the process and going in for the close is very, very unique and particular to your business and your company. So we wouldn't just go to a big company, go knock on the door at Apple and, throw up on them about our product and in 5 minutes ask for the sale. So it is a process, and I don't know what everyone's sales cycle is. It varies. So it's not going to happen at a networking event, especially when you only have a few minutes to talk to each, the person. So before you go into the networking event, we talked a little bit about knowing who your Kevin Bacon is. So I would encourage everyone to sit down, think about your industry and who is connected to your same target market. So for a realtor, it might be mortgage brokers, inspectors, plumbers, carpeting folks, interior designers, or any combination of those. So let's say it was an interior designer. If someone were to ask me, Sabrina, do you know of anyone wanting to buy or sell a home? I'm probably not going to be able to think of anyone. Yet, if I drive down the street, I'll see a lot of for sale signs. So as soon as I see them, I'm reminded. But when someone asks me on the spot, do you know anyone looking to buy or sell? I'm not going to be able to think of anyone. But I do know 5 interior designers. So, but maybe that's just how my brain works. Right. I tend to feel like people know other people for what their business is and their company, what line of work they're in, and don't necessarily know what their needs are.
Well, and that's where some of those questions come in about finding out who they are and what they offer and how you can help them as well as how they help other people. I know you have one of your blog posts is about 10 things not to do. So what else comes to mind for you about the do not do this when you're networking?
Another thing people do is, let's say I'm going to have a presentation for my company and I want to get as many people there as I can, but if I tell them what I'm presenting on, they won't come. So I'm going to be evasive about my business, and that doesn't help for a couple of reasons. People feel like bait and switch. By the time they get there, they had a different idea of what was going on. Plus, you have a room full of people that might not be interested in what you're presenting. So I say, be very open and upfront and really distill down, getting to the people who are interested in what you're offering, and not all I have, a lot of people think all I have to do is get them in front of me and they're going to want this. But then they use they're evasive and use bait and switch tactics just to get a presentation because they know for every 100 presentations I do, I close 3 deals. So they just want to get 100. But how about 100 quality presentations because I'm dealing with my target market and closing 80%? That's just a better use of everyone's time. some other things. Let's see what not to do. Because we've talked a lot, I have on one of my blog articles, don't drink a lot, and don't, save the pickup lines for Match.com, that's always good. So don't be pushy, don't be shy, don't talk to the same person for the whole event. Troll for a mate, that's what I was just mentioning. And like the evasive side, on the opposite side of that is giving way too many details. And someone asks you, so tell me about your company. Or what do you do? So what do you do? When someone asks you what do you do, or tell me about your company, they're really hoping you have a fascinating answer. They're praying, please let this person have a fascinating, quick answer. So the last thing they want is the person to go into every detail of their business and about features instead of benefits. So we don't want to talk about this pen and everything that it can do. They want to hear the benefit of me using that pen. So talking a little bit more about benefits and how you help other people and how you can solve their problem is going to be better than kind of regurgitating a laundry list of features about what you do.
Benefits are really, really important.
Yes.
How do you help people? And actually, I'm looking, here we go. So one of the books that I was a co-author in was So What Do You Do by our friend Joel Comm. And each chapter talks not just about what the person does, but it talked about sort of their story of how they came to do what they're doing. So that's something also that could be of interest to people, is how you got to be where you are, as long as it's not long, drawn out, and tedious. So keep that in mind when you want to share something about yourself. When people ask,
and there's that TEDx talk out there, the TED talk out there with Simon Sinek about people don't care what you do, they care why you do it. They don't care what or how you do it, they care why you do it. It's such a great video. Have you seen that one?
I don't think I have seen that one. I've seen so many, it's hard to remember which one was which. One that stands out for me, and actually, one that stands out for me is Amy Cuddy, who did a TED talk about power poses. So I think the reason I bring it up is because if you're going into a networking event, a lot of people are afraid, I think, to step in that room, especially if they don't know people. So, if you take a power pose, which you can't see it on the screen, but if you stand up with your hands like, Superwoman or Superman for 2 minutes, Amy Cuddy said, she studied this scientifically, that it makes a difference in your attitude and your demeanor and how you approach people. So, we, I think, sometimes can all be a little bit nervous going into that big room. But if you have some confidence that, everyone is there for the same reason. They want to meet people and they want to connect.
Yeah, so mindset, that's a great point. Before you even go in, think about what is my purpose and what am I going in for? And it's not to make a sale.
Right.
And if we just keep in mind what our purpose is and what we're hoping to get and give at the event.
Yeah, there's a saying that comes to mind. Seth Godin said it, and he said something, it was about elevator pitches, and he was saying, he, I think, was insinuating that you don't need an elevator pitch, because his next comment was, whoever sold anything in an elevator? And again, it goes back to, well, for the few minutes you're in an elevator, are you building a relationship? So take that time. But I want to step back and see, when it comes to networking, do you have, I know you say about be consistent and commit to it. So is it important that people go to an event once a week, once a month? Or does it matter how often they network?
It does. I mean, the credibility and credibility is built and relationships are formed the more consistent you are. If you could go, so it's not a matter of just going through the motions and going to the event, as people are probably gathering by now. So you can go to the gym, but if you're not working out the right way, you won't see the results. So same at networking events. So if there's a group that hosts multiple events a month, try to go to maybe 1 per week. 5 per week is a bit much. People that say, oh, I'm so great at networking, I go to 5 a week or 6 or 8 or however many. I don't even know how they follow up with the people they meet or keep track of everybody they meet. So it's not a matter of how often, but it's how effective you are when you go. But getting in front of those people at that event more than once a month is crucial, just to kind of keep the conversation going and the relationship forming and moving forward. So, I mean, we offer 11 networking events a month, anywhere from 3 or 4 per week, where people would meet some of the same people. I mean, see some of the same people over and over again, but they'll also meet new people. So I don't know, sometimes finding a group that hosts multiple events that you can float around to is helpful. You understand the group's format, you'll see some of the same people, but you'll always have an opportunity to meet new people. But that's how you're building credibility, and the ever important relationship and rapport is by staying in front of people a couple of times a month. Sometimes it might mean, if you network with a group that only meets once a month, is getting in front of those people one-on-one, or having a phone call or some other conversation, or following up by sending them an article you thought they might be interested that you found on the web, or just some other way to kind of stay in front of them and keep that relationship moving forward.
Well, and I put in the comments section a link to the blog where you talk about follow-up and the 10 ways to stand out, and follow up after you've met somebody at an event. But I also want to put in here a link to, you have an ebook that's available for people. Why don't you tell them about your Networking for Success ebook? And the link is in the comment section for those who are interested.
Thank you. I didn't know that I could recall that. Yeah, it's just, from the very basics of your mindset and your approach and being a go-giver when you network, to asking good questions and following up. And so it's just some of my tips that, and this is all information I've learned along the way since I've been studying it and wanting to make it more comfortable for others as they network. And so that's just kind of an ebook that distills down my top tips and how to be most effective and productive networking, and not feeling like you're spinning your wheels, because that's exhausting. And then, it's coffee overload by meeting with so many people, and I call it, it's death by coffee. And we just don't need to be doing it. We can be a little more strategic when we network. And when we are, and we start seeing the results, networking becomes fun. It doesn't have to be a burden or a hassle. It can be fun, especially when you're networking with the right people and with the right group. They become your friends.
That's true. And I think when you go consistently, as you said, to the same group, then you start to build some of those relationships, and some of that fear also goes away, because now when you walk in, you'll meet some people that but you'll also meet some new faces as well. And I often say this, that it's not just about going and, for example, people that I think that get involved in groups, they don't just show up and hand out cards and leave, but they really get involved. When their phone rings, many times that person who's calling may be someone they don't know, but they were referred by somebody they met, that they sat on a committee with, or, were involved on a nonprofit event. and that person said, oh my God, you should call Sabrina. You know, she's the perfect match for you. Even if that person never even worked with you, but they knew you from their involvement in that group. And so the relationships kind of turn over that way as well. So for those of you who are interested in Sabrina's ebook, the link is in the comment section. You can check that out. And I want you to also share something about, oh God, I just forgot what it was.
You touched on a great point about the referral and being handed over as a referral. There was a great book I read. I think it was one of the first networking books I read, called The Referral of a Lifetime by Tim Templeton. And it's a Ken Blanchard series in one of his series. But it talks about when we're given a referral, we ask for a referral and we're given it, and someone connects us with one of their clients or just someone else. That is, first of all, they regard you very highly to even give the referral. And then suddenly the person you're being connected with thinks highly of you as well, especially, you know, depending how strong their relationship is. So receiving and giving referrals is huge to any company and any business. And we should definitely be asking for those when we're networking.
Well, and I'll add to that, not just asking for them, but when you get them, thank the people who referred you. So for example, the woman I met with yesterday, she was referred to me by somebody. So I've already reached out to the person who referred her and said, thank you, you know, and I haven't done any work with that other person. She heard me speak at an event and she went, I think this is a good match. So thank you, I find, are just two little words that make a big difference. And I know in the follow-up blog post that you wrote, you talk about handwritten notes. And I know Bob Berg really believes in handwritten notes, and I'm a big believer in handwritten notes. I just think it's something that not many of us get anymore. So it makes a bigger impact when somebody gets something in the mail that says, thank you. Would you agree?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because I mean, and I'm happy when I get a handwritten note. First of all, my attention is drawn to the envelope because it's a handwritten, my address is, you know, and so that's different just in and of itself. But to be separate from someone, apart, physically apart, and to receive a card and in their handwriting and their signature with a personal note is very connecting. So I encourage people to do that. And also along the same lines, when you do receive a referral, if you were not able to help the person, hopefully you can refer them to someone else who can help them, but go back to the original, you know, to the person where their referral came from and let them know, I wasn't able to help Sally Sue, but I referred her off to my partner who is going to take great care of her. You know, something like that. So it goes both ways, whether you are able to help or not. Either way, thank them for that referral.
Well, and you brought up a good point that I think reiterates something you already said, which is, you know, the more that you're out there and connecting with people, the more you will have those other referrals to give. So, you know, lots of times somebody might contact me and I'm not a fit, but rather than just saying I'm not a fit, it's always great to say, I'm not a fit, but maybe Joe is, and refer it on to somebody else. So I think that's another benefit of networking. It's not always about just who can you find to do business with, but who can you find that you can help other people do business with as well. So I strongly agree with that. And we've got Louis saying, hey, the ebook looks great from what he's seen so far. So he's already
Thank you.
Your ebook. And for anyone that wants to jump on board, we do have a seat open. If you have a question that you want to ask and you feel like being on screen, you can certainly do that. If not, we are approaching the hour and we will wrap it up. Sabrina, why don't you tell people, we've given them the link to your ebook, but how can people reach you or find you if they want to connect with you?
I mean, I'm active on social media. So Facebook, Sabrina Risley, Twitter, Sabrina M. Risley. I'm on LinkedIn. And then my website is certusnetwork.com. And then by email, sabrina@certusnetwork.com.
Okay, so let's put that in your Certus Network SabrinaRisley.com is the website. Sabrina M. Risley is her Twitter handle. You can find her on Facebook at Sabrina Risley. And I want to thank you, Sabrina, for taking time to be here today. I'm glad we got through our little technical glitches and that we've both been able to chat back and forth. One more time, we'll give anybody opportunity if they want to jump on board. If not, we will sign off. I want to wish everybody a happy Valentine's Day that's coming around this weekend. And just remind you that the Marketing Blab, I won't be having one for a couple of weeks. I'll be traveling, so I'll be back in March. But you're on the Marketing Blab with Deborah, and you can find me at deborahjason.com. And like Sabrina, I'm on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and most of the networks. So Sabrina, do you have any closing comments you want to share before we sign off?
Just go out there, network, connect with people, have fun. Networking doesn't have to be painful. It can be really fun. So just figure out a way that you can make it fun for you. And I want to thank you, Deborah, for having me. I've had a blast this morning. I can't think of another way I'd want to spend my Friday morning than with you and all your friends. Thank you.
Well, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. So we're going to sign off. I will stop the recording. If anybody who is camera shy wants to get on after the recording is done, feel free. I'll stay on for a few more moments. But everyone, thanks for being here. Thank you again, Sabrina. Have a great Friday and a great weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.